Hi guys, Arbery trial has finished and we've just got the verdict from the jury. Travis McMichael got convicted in malice murder, Greg McMichael in felony murder, and Roddy Bryan got a split case for felony murder. As a guy who followed the story from the very beginning to the end, I was truly shocked what the trial actually revealed and how media still continue to lie to us about this case. Let's start from the woke media version. Ahmaud Arbery, 25 years old black male, decided to jog in the white neighborhood of Brunswick, Georgia. White supremacist rednecks Travis McMichael and his father Greg McMichael, along with Roddy Bryan, decided that this is very suspicious that a black guy running in our neighborhood. He must have done certain crime. They decided to use their pickup truck to stop him and ask why he's running here. Arbery refused to do this and kept running. Then rednecks decided to box him and shoot him like an animal. There is a whole video of that accident made by Roddy Bryan and everything is so clear, we don't need any trial. And the video is indeed shocking, but the whole story is 100% made by the mass media. Here is more sane version presented by the prosecution. Ahmaud Arbery maybe was a jogger in his private life, but on that day he actually walked slowly into the neighborhood. Then he went inside an unfinished house without any authorization, and one of the neighbor called Matt Albenzi actually spotted him. He realized that and he decided to sprint away. McMichaels and Bryan have seen the black guy running and they assume that this guy might have been related to some recent crimes within that neighborhood. And they decided to do a citizen arrest. According to prosecution, this was completely illegal because Arbery didn't take or damage anything in that unfinished house, therefore there is no crime. Plus, the neighbor Albenzi never communicated to McMichaels or Bryan anything about that trespassing, therefore they had no immediate knowledge of that accident. For the shooting part, it's actually very clear from the video that Arbery actually attacked McMichael and started to fight over the gun, and only then McMichael decided to use it, which is rather self-defense than a cold-blooded malice murder. But the prosecution argues that McMichael had no right to limit the freedom of movement of Arbery, therefore there was an aggravated assault, which means that McMichael was a prime aggressor and Arbery had a right of self-defense. If you read Georgian law about citizen arrest, a private person may arrest an offender if the offense is committed in his presence or within his immediate knowledge. Criminal trespassing is an offense of misdemeanor in Georgia, but since they had no immediate knowledge, this is not applicable. The second part of the law, if the offense is a felony or the offender is escaping or attempting to escape, a private person may arrest him upon reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion. Criminal trespassing is not a felony, therefore this is not applicable as well. You might conclude that this is the end of the story and jury actually did it right, but this is not the full story. Details here are extremely important and change everything. Here are the missing parts of that story. So, there is an unfinished open house which belongs to Larry English. This guy doesn't live into the neighborhood but comes here occasionally, and he stores his boat and bunch of expensive equipment inside that house. There is a neighbor, Matt Albenzi, who lives 2 houses away and met English on several occasions. Since a couple of years, the number of petty crimes in the neighborhood went up, so Albenzi and English decided to install a bunch of security cameras on their properties. If someone enters the English house at night, the camera automatically notifies English and sends him the full video. On October 25, 2019, camera catches Arbery inside the house. Notifies English, English called the police came but he's already gone. On November 18th, Arbery again in the house at night, they call the police and he's gone again. December 17th, third time Arbery is inside, but this time English was sick so he didn't call the police. During that period, English met his neighbor Albenzi again and showed him this video of that guy inside his house and told him that equipment worth of $2,500 was actually stolen from the house. English had no idea when it happened and who did it, because his camera was outside of the range for that particular place. But that black male is definitely a suspect. Albenzi promised to catch this guy if he ever sees him. Obviously, this kind of news quickly spread around this quiet and rural neighborhood, and McMichaels, who were also neighbors of Albenzi, were aware of the situation. And now the most crucial event which media completely ignores. On February 11, 2020, just 12 days before the accident, McMichael decided to get gas around 7 p.m. It is already night, and he suddenly sees a black guy walking near the English house. He decided to stop and talk to the guy, but Arbery did a strange motion like he was trying to take his gun out of his pants and then run inside the English's house. McMichael freaked out, jumped back to the car and drove immediately to his home and called the police. We have this call on record, which is crucial, and McMichael tells the police that he believes that Arbery is armed. The police came and young McMichael along with Albenzi, all were armed, were trying to help the police to find the guy. Again, Arbery fled. But we have a body cam video of that policeman when 3 of them were discussing that this is at least a criminal trespassing. And again, this is all 12 days prior to the accident. If you return to the Georgia law again, now that first part is actually applicable because there is a criminal trespassing, which is an offense, and it is committed in his presence. What is more striking is how the burglary defined within the Georgia law. A person commits the offense of burglary in the second degree when, without authority and with the intent to commit a felony or theft herein, he or she enters or remains within occupied, unoccupied, or vacant building, structure, vehicle, railroad car, watercraft, or aircraft. You don't need to steal anything, you just need to have an intent, and entering building at night and running away is likely an intent. And the house doesn't need to be finished to make it a burglary, and burglary is a felony. Now if you return to the second part of the citizen arrest law, they had a reasonable and probable grounds of suspicion that there was an intent of burglary, so it's applicable here. Now let's talk about the day of killing. Arbery walked into the hood, entered in the English's house, Albenzi spotted him, took his revolver, and actually called the police. Then Arbery realized that he got spotted and he started to sprint away. Old McMichael was outside of the house and seen Arbery running on the street. He rushed inside the house and told the young McMichael that the guy is running on the street. Young McMichael took the shotgun, because that's what he had around him, put it inside the car and started to drive slowly to the suspect. What is interesting that we have a clear video evidence of Albenzi raising his hand and showing the direction of where the guy is running, reassuring McMichaels that this is the same guy they've seen 12 days ago. You might stop me here and argue that I've just said previously that the prosecution argued that there were no communication between Albenzi and McMichaels. Well, Albenzi testified that he was just walking on the street and raised his hand without any intention. And I kind of understand that this guy doesn't want to spend the rest of his life in the prison because of the woke jury, but it's kind of not okay from the moral perspective. Anyway, McMichaels decided to follow Arbery and try to talk to him. They had 3 occasions to see each other before the killing. What is very important that the gun was never outside during that time. He was always inside the car, it was clearly not visible. And we partially have security cam videos which confirm that. Now, what about the third guy, Brian, who actually recorded everything? He is not the closest neighbor of McMichael, and in fact he only knows the old McMichael, not the young one. So Brian is doing something outside his house and suddenly he sees Arbery running on the street. He doesn't look like a jogger, nor he's asking for help. Then he sees the truck of old McMichael and realizes that maybe something is wrong here. He decided to drive and record everything. What is very important, he didn't take any gun with him. At some point he's following Arbery at the same distance, but suddenly Arbery decided to change the direction and run on his truck. Brian freaked out and dropped his phone, so we only have the sound, not the video. But we know that Arbery was trying to open the door of the Brian's truck multiple times, which is kind of a car hijacking. What is crucial here that McMichaels and Brian had 0 communication, and in fact, young McMichael had no clue who's this guy inside that car. Around that time, McMichael decided to stop his truck at the convenient intersection. Old McMichael went on the back of the truck to be able to see where the guy is, so that when the police arrives, he can clearly direct them. Then they realized that they actually haven't called to the police. So old McMichael started to call 911 and the young McMichael took his shotgun out of the car. And as you already know, the police was already called by Albenzi, but McMichaels didn't know anything about this. In the same time, Brian, despite the recent attack on his car, decided to continue to drive and record everything. This time he tries to keep a much larger distance. The biggest question is why Brian is even accused of murder. The prosecution argued that he wanted to box Arbery. And the whole evidence is coming from the last 10 seconds of that video when Brian is driving towards Arbery. he is really far away and want to keep a distance, and the investigation proved that there were no communication between McMichaels and Brian. There was a wide, dry creek between McMichaels and Brian's car, so Arbery could have turned into that creek if he really wanted. Instead, he was running directly towards McMichael's truck, and then he made this sudden move and changed the direction, and then started to confront McMichael and tried to fight over the gun. Another crucial thing that the police arrived to the scene 30 seconds after the accident. And Brian explained everything on the spot, and he said that he has everything on the record and actually invited the policeman to watch this video before he actually was able to watch it by himself. This is confirmed by the police body cam. The prosecution made up some kind of a conspiracy that Brian actually made an aggravated assault with his truck during the time when his phone was dropped on the floor. There is simply no evidence for that. Last thing, why McMichael decided to brandishing the gun. Apparently he had a police training when he was a part of the Navy Guard, and one of the ways to de-escalate the situation was to show the gun, which kind of makes sense. The second thing, that he was clearly afraid of his life and the life of his father because he didn't know whether Arbery has a gun or not. But the most important fact, that McMichael didn't use his gun until the point when Arbery started to fight with him, and the first shot went all the way through his wrist to his chest. And two experts confirmed that this was a close contact shot. Now let's talk about the weirdness of the court and how it might affect the fair judgment. First, the court was not allowed to talk about the reason why Arbery was in this neighborhood on that day, which means that prosecution is not allowed to suggest that he was jogging, and at the same time defense cannot argue that he was trying to steal something. Prosecution clearly violated that. They were constantly telling that he is jogger, referring to his lifestyle, but actually kind of suggesting that that was about that day. They even showed the pictures of his running shoes from the autopsy, suggesting that they were extremely used. Second, it's not allowed to talk about mental health of Arbery, and it's not allowed to talk that he was on probation, and that could have been a reason why he was afraid of meeting the police. Also, there are a bunch of statements from different policemen who had a previous interaction with Arbery, and also we have one video of that interaction. And all of them confirmed that he wanted to confront the police for no reason. And there is also a video when he got tased for that. He was also diagnosed with certain mental conditions, and I know those things from the previous trials which got mistrial, but this time none of this evidence is allowed. 3. None of the accused were eligible for bail, because the police didn't start the investigation initially, and GBI and FBI assumed that because of old McMichael was an ex-policeman, maybe there is some kind of a corruption in this case. The prosecution is not allowed to bring this argument to the court. But the problem is that McMichaels gave their statement to the police on the day of accident, despite the fact that they had a right to remain silent. But at that point they assumed that they are 100% right and there will be no woke media who would create this strange fake narrative. Because of that, their statements were not that accurate or complete as they could have been. And the prosecution takes this as an argument, implying that there was kind of a conspiracy between police and McMichaels. The final thing, that every day in the courtroom there were some strange people. There were some famous black pastors outside of the Brunswick, there were some very famous human rights activists outside of the state. All these people were clearly there to make jury more woke. To summarize, media created a fake narrative and made it super famous. And jury members, which usually have very low IQ to overcome the bias and look at the details, decided to jail 3 men, potentially for life. When I was younger, I thought that US criminal system is something exemplary. But now I understand that no matter what defense is going to talk in this kind of a public cases, the ignorant people will decide the fate based on the fake news. Thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time, bye!